How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Cold Front Report post-game show. Joining me are two of the usual suspects. First and foremost, Travis Blakesley. Travis, how you doing today, man?
It's always good after a Bills win, but it does come with a heavy heart. The saga that is quarterback Mr. White, it's come to a close.
Yeah, Mike White didn't look so good today. Jeremy Turner Montgomery, how you doing today, man? Another Bills win and a lot to talk about tonight.
Yeah, a lot to talk about. I'm happy that we can go from hot to cold to back to hot. And last week, everybody when they got the pitchforks today, we're like, hey, on who we're gonna beat next. So good to see that.
I mean, hey, Bills Mafia had a lot of reason to come out with the pitchforks last week, and today it did not look much. It did not look like the same Bills team. They came out rejuvenated, re-energized, and they looked like a completely different football team. Looked like the Bills of old that we saw earlier in the season. Jeremy, can you kind of give me your feelings on how you felt just the overall vibes of the football team were today coming out to play the Jets?
I mean, you heard during the week that Sean McDermott was no nonsense during practice week. There was no dancing, there was no celebrating, there was no fun. He took the fun out of it. So he essentially went back to grade school and said, all right, lights off in the classroom, nobody talking, sitting two desks apart, and we're going to get back to the fundamentals because we just lost a really bad game. We actually embarrassed ourselves in a game against a team that we should have beat. And yeah, it showed in the team today. The execution was there. We got the running game going. The defense was physical as usual. And it didn't seem like we didn't execute on or wasn't clicking on any cylinders. All three phases of the game, ready to go.
Yeah, and before that loss to the Jaguars and also the Titans, you could say that as well. I would speak of this team as the most complete team in football. And today, that was the win. That was how they won this game. They played complete. They played really good defense. They were executing on offense, and they were doing what they do on special teams, making plays. They were kicking the ball short on kickoffs again today, trying to give their gunners opportunities to make plays. They've been doing that the last handful of weeks. This is one of the better special teams units in the league. And today it showed against the Jets. Travis, how did you really feel about the win today?
Well, as somebody mentioned in the chat, I think it was Wayne. Yeah, you can't get too excited. Still the Jets. Although they did beat some formidable opponents in their two victories. As I mentioned before, Mike White is riding high off of a good full game performance and then that early first quarter last week. But just like Jeremy said, it was no nonsense. I mean, the defense played as expected. And then the offense kind of went back to basics. I thought we saw a lot of good use of the 22 personnel, a lot of throwing out of it, play action, short passes. And then you saw it kind of softened up the defense when we were able to get some double moves, some deeper patterns out there. And, it kind of went back to what we were used to seeing in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's one thing I wanted to mention about the offense right here at the onset was the amount of variance that we saw. I'm not going to give, I mean, you can give plenty of credence to how the Bills were playing from halfway through the third quarter and on. But in the early portion of this football game, in the first half of the game, you saw a lot of variance with the offense. You saw a lot of different things, a lot of different moving pieces in the offense that we hadn't really seen in the last handful of weeks. I feel like Isaiah McKenzie was a lost chess piece in this offense for a handful of weeks, and they weren't really giving him as many touches. They weren't really giving him as many looks. And then right there on the first drive, they were using their speed athlete to their advantage. They bring out Ryan Bates, and they were running heavy sets to try and get the running game going, to give him more of a push at the line of scrimmage, to try and grade the run game a little bit, to try and get Devin Singletary and Zach Moss off the ground to start the game. Those sort of things, I felt like those sort of things culminated in what overall helped the Bills' offensive flow today. And that's some things that I hadn't really seen in weeks prior that I really felt like helped Bills' effort today, especially on the ground. Jeremy, how did you feel the Bills' running game looked today in the overall efforts of the Bills' offense?
I thought the running game was good. I felt like it was more balanced today. Now, when you look at the stat sheet, we still didn't run the ball as many times as I would like to see us run a ball, especially in a game that we're up by at least 20 points for the majority of it. But still, we got Zach Moss involved at the right spots that Zach Moss was supposed to be involved in. We got Devin Singletary the ball in the spots that Devin's supposed to get the ball in. And today we actually mixed in the brother Matt Breida, and he actually scored 2 touchdowns for us. And I was saying last week on my show on Tuesday that if it's a true committee, that all 3 of these guys have to be active. If you're really going to go with the hot hand, all three of these guys be active, because you can't just use two bags. You have to have all three, because every single one of these guys brings something different to the table. And it can only help, in my opinion, a play caller when designing plays and designing a game plan that, hey, Devin Singletary can't do what Zach Moss does. Zach Moss can't do what Devin Singletary does. And Matt Breida can't really do what either one of those guys do. You know, they're all kind of built differently. Today we saw that. We got Matt Breida in the game. There was no film for the Jets and 2 touchdowns, 2 tutties.
And I really think, kind of just go off your point of Matt Breida and them not really giving him any touches to start the season. You really, I think that adding that element and having a plan for that element to be added to this offense certainly did wonders. Not just activating Matt Breida and not really having a plan for how you're going to involve in the offense. Get him involved on the first series, and he catches a touchdown on the first drive. And he was getting touches periodically throughout the day, as you would see Zach Moss or Devin Singletary throughout the season. And I thought that you can say what you will about the fumble, but I think what Matt Breida adds to the offense has a value. And I'm really hoping to see this running back room run by committee going forward, using those three and using all three of what those three players add to the offense to really kind of just fuel what the Bills can do on the ground game as a whole. Travis, how'd you feel about Matt Breida and the Bills rushing attack today?
Well, I guess overall it was good enough. It was a great mix of what we've seen and just been able to, kind of execute better with a lot of the inside run. But then Breida adds an extra layer of doing that wide zone scheme, which we saw him either stretch it or cut back. He was able to pick his lane and get upfield. The good news after the fumble, I mean, we were up quite a bit there. You don't want to see it, and we didn't really see him after that. But, McDermott's not afraid to go back to him. So I think with the evolution of this run game and what Breida can give you in the passing game, I think we're going to see him, especially if we're going to have guys down. There's a lot left to be desired, but as far as what we've seen, I like that we showed a lot more run favorable fronts, meaning we saw a lot more 22 personnel, a lot of 2 tight end looks, a lot more Reggie Gilliam. So I think the balance is key, and kind of the direction that Dable wanted to take this offense was clear, where I think we were just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall the last couple of weeks to see what sticks.
Yeah, it's certainly refreshing to see them get back on track. And you kind of alluded to the passing offense today, so let's talk about it. 366 yards for Josh Allen today. What was he? 21 for 28. A really good high completion percentage, and not to mention Stephon Diggs having 8 catches for 162 yards and a touchdown. Jeremy, what were your thoughts on the Bills' passing attack today and how they function?
Well, I think that we went to Stephon Diggs early and we went to Autumn. And I think that one of the mistakes that we're making when we're calling these plays in early game situations for most of the season is we were not getting him involved early enough. And I'm not for force feeding the ball to star players. I like balance. I like just a natural flow, but it's imperative to get Stephon Diggs the ball very early in the game, because it's going to take pressure off some of these other guys. As you saw with them keying in on Stephon a little bit more, Gabe Davis was able to eat today. Emmanuel Sanders was able to eat a little bit. Now, Cole Beasley was quiet today, and you're going to have that when you have so many good players. But then again, Cole Beasley's production, we had Dawson Knox back in the lineup. He got a little production today. We got Matt Breida. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a situation where if you get Diggs the ball early, it's going to put pressure on the defense, and they're going to key it on him, and it's going to take some of the pressure off the other core guys.
Yeah, Stephon Diggs came to play today. 8 catches, 162 yards. I already said it. He looked really good in one-on-one coverage and any coverage, really. He was making plays. He was getting open. He was playing the ball. He was doing a really good job today. Obviously, that long strike that Allen hit him on a 57-yarder down the field, he looked really they had a good chemistry today. And I thought that what he did a lot for this Bills offense to keep the chains moving. And as Jeremy had also mentioned, opening up the other receivers such as Gabriel Davis as well. Travis, how did you feel about the Bills' passing attack today and their number 1 receiver?
Well, I think I know Jeremy mentioned it, and a ton of other people on their content were talking about getting Diggs involved, and I think it was a concerted effort, not only by Dayball and the play scheme and the play design, but also Josh and Diggs just as players. If you're going to leave them out there one-on-one with, let's be honest, a bunch of nobodies, you got to keep going to them. And, even, even, the announcers were calling for it. So, it should really be an offense where we are keying in on Diggs and then spreading the ball throughout the other guys. But, if you see one-on-ones, you got to go to Diggs. And, it was good to see him get his numbers, get his catches, and it really made it was really a key to the Bills offense continuing to move the ball downfield and also just move the chains.
Yeah, and it was really refreshing today. The Bills offense really was clicking on all cylinders. They were doing what they wanted. And I think, the one thing that can't go unmentioned with this Bills passing attack was I felt like the effort up front on the offensive line looked really good. They looked a lot, aside from the one sack where the corner really kind of disguised it well and came flying in. And, it was pretty well disguised. And he came untouched and sacked Josh Allen pretty bad. Aside from that play and the play Tommy Doyle came in and Shaq Lawson got a sack, the Bills pass protection today was really good. They held up incredibly well with players such as Quinnen Williams on the other side of the line. And hopefully it's a sign of what's to come for this offensive line after last week's debacle in Jacksonville. Players such as Spencer Brown coming back in today, he looked really good coming off of his injury, and he looked comfortable. He looked like he was getting a lot of push on the right side of the line of scrimmage. And I really think that Darrell Williams sliding inside a guard and Spencer Brown playing tackle is quite formidable for what you want to do on that right side of the offensive line. Ike Bacher and John Feliciano at left guard, that, John Feliciano's still on injured reserve. He's still going to be out. But Ike Bacher did a serviceable job today at left guard. And I thought overall that Bills offensive line was much improved from a poor effort last week. I thought it had a big part in why the Bills offense was able to get moving early on in this game. Jeremy, what were your thoughts on the Bills offensive line performance today?
Yeah, I think there's no more questions about what the difference is when you have Darrell Williams at right guard and specifically Spencer Brown at right tackle. It made the entire line look different. And I think moving forward, we're going to have to make a decision are we staying this course into the offseason? Well, because obviously we just gave Darrell Williams his contract extension this year, but he's fine at right guard. And I know at Carolina, he shuffled positions, but I think his weakest point was left guard. So I know that me and you specifically were a little worried with him moving into the interior line, but I can say that our right side of our line are set. Now, obviously, when we get Feliciano back, that'd be more of a veteran than Bodiger or Cody Ford at the left guard position. But this game here made me feel really confident about the line. And like I said, I think that everybody, including the offensive line, just got back to the fundamentals this week. So I'm very confident in them. Thought they looked good today. They opened a lot of rushing lanes, which I think was everyone's biggest scare. It wasn't so much the pass blocking. It was the run game. And as Travis alluded to earlier, we went to the outside zone blocking scheme and zone runs, and we're effective.
And I really think, along with the schemes, I also think that this offensive line not having many game snaps all together, all five of them, include John Feliciano in that bunch, because when he comes back from injured reserve, he will be thrown into the starting mix. But I think them not having as many game snaps together really kind of bleeds into the inefficiency of the run game from the past couple of weeks. And hopefully it's a sign of things to come, of something for Bills fans to hold their hats on, to kind of have some optimism with this Bills offensive line, as it can only get better going forward. Travis, what were your thoughts on the Bills offensive line's performance today?
So when you have one guy go down and you have to move three different positions, it really, in all reality, it's a problem. I know in theory it sounds great where we can, move guys, versatility, they can play different positions. But what I saw, like I said in my show, I don't think we have the most physical offensive line, but they're not the worst. And I think the biggest issue specifically last week was not necessarily getting beat one-on-one, but just not blocking the right people. I mean, there was that one gif where, you got Ford, Williams, and Morse all blocking one guy where the end comes free. So I think having these guys, like you said, snaps under their belt, but specifically in their specific position is key. And having a guy like Spencer Brown, who I was happy to see, even though I don't want Doyle playing left tackle, I'm glad he stayed on the right side, because I just want him to grow in that position and get better and better, and kind of have a rapport with Williams next to him. So just one less guy shuffling. I think you made all the world of difference. And Spencer Brown gives you that edge. I mean, there's always one or two, maybe even three clips where he just pancakes a guy. It's great to have that fire, especially when you don't have John Feliciano, albeit not the best guard, but at least he brings that fire and that mentality to really, kind of road grade you.
Yeah. And it gets to that point of the time in the show where we have to talk about the Brian Dable approval grade. Well, what grade would you guys give Brian Dable for today? The Bills fans in the chat, you guys, as you can see, as we have on the screen right now, if you missed it in the chat, give us your grade for Brian Dable and how we called plays today and the efficiency and how well the Bills offense played today. Drop your grade from A+ to F- in the comments below. Jeremy, I want to start with you. What grade would you give Brian Dable today?
I'm going to give him an A. And the reason I'm going to give him an A is because he got creative. He got creative with guys that we have not seen used this season so far effectively. It wasn't just going to the drawing board and drawing up plays for Stephon Diggs or drawing up plays for Emmanuel Sanders or Cole Beasley. That's the easy part of the job. The hard part of the job is using the speed of Isaiah McKenzie, using the speed of Matt Breida, who you haven't used this year yet in the regular season, getting Dawson Knox back. That's the tough part. And today I give him A because he was able to do that specifically. And that's something that we have to do moving forward because teams are going to have to film on Stephon Diggs, Sanders, and Beasley. We know what they're going to do. The other teams don't know what we're going to do, but they don't know what they're going to do, Isaiah McKenzie. It was nice to see the Jets, Sweet King, as I like to call him, get back in the end zone again. So I'm going to give him an A today.
Yeah. Good stuff. Travis, how would you feel? What grade would you give Brian Dable for today's performance for the offense?
I'm going to go with B+. Couple of reasons. One play that I really liked, you could see the design, and I think that's what we've lacked a lot. We had a lot of just kind of line up and just run your routes, where there was this one specific play with Dawson Knox, big catch. He came in motion across the line, the formation to the right side, faked a block, and then kind of just snuck right underneath the linebackers and found the soft spot in the zone. One play that I didn't like was when your left tackle goes down and you put a rookie John Doyle in. What do? You dial up on 3rd and 11, you dial up a slow materializing play, and it gets Josh Allen sacked. So there's still some plays that you can clean up, but that's to be said. I mean, that's going to be every offensive coordinator, but I like the intent. I like the formations. Like I said, being under center, I think it was good. A lot of play action. So I'm going to go with a B+.
Just kind of go off of what you said there. I tend to agree, but I want to go with an A this week because I noticed that, and James Mallory mentioned in our Colford Report chat at the end of the game, I didn't even notice until he had said something that all 3 running backs ran in a touchdown in this game. And that's something that, that's an assertion for a coach. That is the coach really kind of just, giving that running back room some more confidence going into the next week, making it a point to run the ball so that when the Bills are inside the 5-yard line, teams are going to have to account for this Bills rushing attack and what they can do at the goal line. Whether that's through the speed that they have with Breida, the power that they possess with Moss, or what Devin Singletary can do after he makes a cut and picks his gap. They are a dangerous team when running the football inside the 5-yard line. That's one of the things that they wanted to assert this week. And I thought they did that exactly. Like Jeremy said earlier when we were discussing the run game, the stats aren't going to pop off the charts to you in comparison to other weeks of what this Bills run game has been capable of. But it was certainly a serviceable game. It was a really good game for this Bills rushing attack. 140 yards of rushing in this game. That's pretty good for this Bills offense. And it's good to see this rushing attack get back on track. It's good to see the offensive line get back on track. And most certainly it's good to see the Bills offense get back on track after a bad game at Jacksonville last week. But as good of a game it was for the Bills offense, it was as equally of a good game for the Bills defense, forcing 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions. All of the players in the secondary forced a turnover. That was the first time since, I believe, 1967 I saw it was. Crazy stuff today for this Bills defense. Travis, I want to start with you. What really stood out the most to you for that Bills defense today?
Well, obviously the turnovers. I mean, a lot of them were forced. The front 4 got a ton of pressure, although they didn't show up on the stat sheet as sacks. They affected Mike White. I thought The secondary is playing as good as any. I mean, we sit there and we talk about having the best safety combination, but let's be honest, we probably have the best starting secondary. Every which way you got analysts and reporters all touting the Bills as the number one defense, and it's earned. I mean, that extension that we gave Teron Johnson, just he's been playing as long as he stays on the field. We won't have an issue there. He's not afraid to tackle, great in coverage. You got Trey White getting his interception finally on, at first glance, it made seem like it was an easy play, but as Trey does best, he reads the quarterback and kind of leaves his zone and feels where the ball's going. Linebackers playing great. Klein, I thought he's settling in very well. I thought he was very physical. And it's great to know that when guys go down, you have players who are ready to step in. And, what else can you say? They've really answered the bell in regards to last season. And with a defense like this, you can have an offense have its moments throughout the year because you don't make it very far in the playoffs without having a great defense, without having an opportune defense, and the Bills have both.
Yeah, absolutely. A very opportune defense, one of the most in the league. 4 more interceptions today. I thought they looked great up front. I thought AJ Klein was quite surprising today. Jeremy, what were your thoughts on the Bills defense in this game?
I thought they were solid. I thought they were really good. I once again, it goes back to execution. It goes back to his week of practice where it was no nonsense. Although I didn't think that I've had the defense has a problem anyway. I put a post on Facebook last week after the loss to Jacksonville. Whatever you do, please don't blame the defense on this loss. I mean, don't get me wrong. You're not going to just shut down everything, but the one thing we were missing from this Bills defense last year, 2 things, was obviously run stopping, which it seems like we seem to be doing that very well. We got started too late back. But the other thing we weren't doing was creating turnovers. Now, I mean, this may be the most opportunistic Bills defense I've seen in recent history, probably before going back to the Takeo Spikes, London Fletcher defense. And we had Nate Clement at cornerback. And I think we had Jairus Byrd at one point a little bit later down the line. But this defense is causing havoc. And they're making plays. And they're putting the offensive position to score 40 points a game at times, in games at times. Yeah, and to touch on Travis' point about AJ Klein, AJ Klein stepped in. He did a tremendous job today. You can see the veteran presence. It was a bigger difference than when we had Tyrell Dotson step in for Tremaine Edmonds last year to when we have AJ Klein stepping in for this year. You can tell he was reading, he was reacting. He knew what was going on out there. And I know that last year, a lot of people kind of get on the AJ Klein hate train when Milano was out. We also have to realize at this stage in his career, AJ Klein is a middle linebacker. That's what he is. That's what he was most of his career. He's a backup middle linebacker. He's not an outside guy. So to ask him to do things that Milano were doing last year, that was the issue. He can't do what Matt Milano does. He couldn't do it early in his career. He can't do it late in his career either. But he was in the right spot today. We didn't miss a beat. Ed Oliver said earlier in this week that he had full confidence pretty much in AJ by saying that he didn't think we'll miss a step. Would be a huge drop off. Today it wasn't. And obviously we found that Mike White has a noodle arm and maybe he shouldn't have been number 1 pick. Just saying.
Yeah, number 1 pick. That was the one thing that a lot of people touted about Mike White because I hadn't heard of him aside from his 2 games that he had played this year, obviously, as many people hadn't. So they were saying, oh, he's been in the league for a couple of years. He can read defenses. Well, if it's one thing that I know about Sean McDermott's defense, it's quite difficult for any quarterback to read, let alone Mr. Mike White. But at the end of your point there, Jeremy, you kind of mentioned Ed Oliver for a moment and speaking about AJ Klein. But I want to talk about Ed Oliver and just how good he keeps playing. I don't want to come on here and say that Ed Oliver isn't playing good because he is. He is playing incredibly well. I think that he has really kind of come to the surface this season. He's not getting the sacks that a lot of people would want to see him get, but he is causing havoc along the interior of the defensive line and really kind of handling things, his way up there. For a guy who's 280, 290 pounds, who plays quite light and fast and light on his feet, he looks really good, and he does nothing but cause wonders for that Bills defensive line, and he does his job incredibly well. And I think that has a lot to do with why this Bills defensive line played as well as they did today. Star Lotulelei being out of the lineup today, did that impact them? It didn't really seem like it did. I hope to see Star get back. I wish him a speedy recovery after he had tested. I don't know if he tested positive, but he was placed on the COVID the COVID list today. So, but the Bills defense didn't miss a beat. They were missing two of their most vital starters in Tremaine Edmonds and Star Lotulelei, and they didn't miss a beat today against the Jets. While it is still the Jets, that is quite refreshing to say. But yeah, I want to talk a little more about the secondary and what they're able to do and just how they really, make this Bills defense different. Levi Wallace, I don't want to hear nothing about Levi Wallace. I thought Levi Wallace, he continues to play really good. He got beat on one play on the first drive that you can pull out of your hat, and that was it. But I thought Levi Wallace played a great game today, comes away with another interception. Travis, what are your thoughts on the Bills' second cornerback?
Yeah, and just to touch on that one play you're talking about, I mean, they were running that sweep at him. So, I mean, unfortunately, they were a man-to-man coverage, and he has to kind of stay there to try to make the tackle. And, by design, it works. So I wouldn't even say he got beat. But, yeah, Levi Wallace is as good of a number 2 corner as you're going to find in the league. Why people still use him as a scapegoat, I don't know. Maybe they don't watch the game. They don't watch the film. But like I said earlier in the show, they're probably the best secondary in the league. Whether it's pre-snap, as you mentioned, they're going to disguise their coverage. They're playing a lot more effectively in man coverage this year, which I think is the cherry on top, where you saw the Bills stay in a lot of soft cover 3 zones last year, and teams would just methodically drive the football down the field. You see the Bills being able to go to more cover 1 looks, cover 0 looks. They're really multiple. And when you have a guy like Taron Johnson who can fill the role as a weak side linebacker, in that nickel defense, it's fun to watch. I mean, you're always feeling greedy because you think you can get the ball back in some sort of fashion. And I believe this is the third week in a row where we force a turnover when the opponent is driving right before half.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. But you're right. Yeah, that completely went over my head. It just goes to what we said earlier about this being a very opportune defense, knowing when they need to make a play and forcing a turnover. And that has served the Bills incredibly well this season on the defensive side of the ball. Jeremy, what were your thoughts on the performance of Levi Wallace today? How well do you think he's doing over there opposite Tre'Davious White?
I've been saying it forever. He's fine. He's fine. I don't know what people expect. I mean, I get that everybody wants to upgrade certain positions. Don't get me wrong. There's always an upgrade for every position. I mean, hell, there's an upgrade for Josh Allen. You know what I mean? There are quarterbacks that you could upgrade. There ain't many, but you can. There's always an upgrade to be had. But that doesn't mean that it needs to be had. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, could the Bills maybe take an Asante Samuel Jr.? Yeah, but we don't know how good he's been doing in the rookie season. Especially and sometimes it's more pressure when you're coming onto a winning football club than going to a losing. Because you're not playing for a Super Bowl or championships. The pressure is not behind you. Levi has been consistent since day one he stepped on the field. You know what you're going to get, but you also know what you're not going to get. And what you're not going to get necessarily all the time, he's not going to lose you a game. There's not too many games that you could say he lost you on. Some people, I've had one person tell me before that he lost the game versus the Browns with the Higgins. No, he didn't. We lost that game because we refused to run the ball. I'm talking about 3 years ago on this one. So you have to go back 3 years to talk about some football game that Levi Wallace may have lost you. Then it comes down to cap allocation. To get a number 2 cornerbacks are expensive. Left tackles, cornerbacks, quarterbacks, and defensive ends are very expensive in this league. It comes down to cap allocation. I keep saying right now, extend Levi Wallace now. That doesn't mean if you extend him, you can't draft another corner in the first round of ones available, because I think you can sign him to a very reasonable deal. And I'm thinking 4 years, maybe $16 million. $4 million per year with a signing bonus up front of like $6 million. I think that's fair. It comes down to cap allocation. So I just think that people will just overreact with Levi. And yeah, you want a number 2 corner that's also an all-pro. Good luck with that. And good luck with who you're not going to be able to sign when you do that.
Yeah, that's always an excellent point about the cap allocation, because these teams don't have, in comparison to regular Joes such as all of us, they don't have. They may seem like they have endless amounts of money, but they really don't. You know, where they put their funds, who they spend their money on is vital in the success or failures of a football team. So I'm right there with both of you. I love Levi Wallace. I love what he brings to the football team. I think that, you know, he does his job, and he does his job not the best, but also not the worst. He's a serviceable corner who can start in the NFL, and you're not going to find those on trees. You're not going to find them. Some teams reach for them in the drafts. You know, you have a player that you brought in off the street as an undrafted free agent a handful of years ago, who you've entrusted since halfway through his rookie season to start opposite Tre'Davious White, and he has done that for the last 3.5 seasons. And, you know, he's done it well. I don't think that there's any issue to be had with Levi Wallace. He's not marginal. He's not when you talk about Levi Wallace, I think you have to really kind of say that he's not in the upper echelon of corners by any means, but he's one of the better second string cornerbacks in the NFL. And in culmination with the safeties that he has behind him, and also the nickel corner that he has playing inside of him, and also the guy he has opposite him, he is more than serviceable in the role that he has on this football team. And I think that today, that on days like today, you have to sing the praises of Levi Wallace, because he can't get enough credit, because he's really underrated. And I think a lot of people, you know, as Travis said, he is a bit of a scapegoat for this Bills secondary whenever they have a lesser game than they do on days such as today.
I don't want to cut you off, but you know, when people talk about the two cornerback thing, right? We seen what the Dolphins did and the amount of money they put it behind Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, and you got 3 wins to show 4 out of 9.
Exactly. The production we're getting out of him and Trey White. Meanwhile, he's making like $1.5 million a year. Levi Wallace. I mean, you're getting the same production.
That's what I mean. Go look in Cleveland. You got Denzel Ward. You drafted Greedy Williams high. You just allocated money to Troy Hill, and prayers out to him because he left out on a stretcher today.
Drafted Greg Newsome.
Right. You drafted Greg Newsome, and you signed John Johnson to a big deal. And you know what? You got 500. Your quarterback can't throw touchdowns. He ain't stopping anybody. So that's what I mean about cap allocation. It's not smart allocating top tier money to 2 cornerbacks, because unfortunately, even when you have one, you see it. Cornerbacks can be taken out of a football game very easily. Ask Cleveland today. They got run all over. That's how you take them out. You take the top of your helmet, you put it down, and you put it in their chest. Out of the game. Goodbye.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Bills have had pretty good corners here since Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott have taken over. You know, that is their wheelhouse, what they can do with defensive backs, how they can disguise them, what they can do to kind of hide what those guys are going to be doing when the ball is snapped. You know, that is their wheelhouse, and that is what they specialize in, is defensive backfields. And the Bills' defensive backfield, you know, even when players such as Dane Jackson have to come out there and take a snap or come out for an extended period of time, those players, they're capable. They're well-coached football players. And, you know, that's not to sit here and say that the Bills shouldn't sign a high-priced name, or they can't get any better at the position, but they have the guys in the room that they trust, and they send the guys out there to do their jobs because they trust them to do that. And that's as simple as it gets. You know, this defense, they've had time to kind of bring this defense along and, you know, coach these guys up. Players such as Levi Wallace, you know, they know this defense. They've been in it. They've lived in this defense. So I don't think you can really, that's not something you can just do. You can just draft a football player and expect him to come in off the street and play better than Levi Wallace just because he's a better athlete or he's this or that. Not necessarily. You know, Levi Wallace isn't the best athlete in the world. He's not the most physical quarterback in the world either, but he's certainly serviceable, and they most certainly trust him. And I think that goes a much longer way than a lot of people really kind of paint a picture of in the NFL, especially with this coaching staff and how they side with comfort a lot.
You know, Cody Wells has a good question here, and I think that we should definitely answer this because it's tied to what we're talking about. So Cody asks, my question is, how much do we attribute the secondary, like Levi Wallace's success, to the amount of QB pressure from the D-line? I think you can go back 30 years to NFL history and attribute defensive line pressure to directly tied to excessive defensive backs. If I don't care if you have Deion Sanders, Darrell Green, and Aeneas Williams, nickel, corner, and nickel. If your quarterback has 8 seconds or 7 seconds to throw the ball, they're going to get beat. If you have 3 seconds, I don't care. Man, you can give me Leotis McKelvin. You can get Yeah, I'm serious. You can give me Leonis McKelvin. I'm trying to think of some corner that was bad. Chris Watson, who used to he returned punts, the worst punt return in Bills history, and just name somebody else. And guess what? They'll probably have more success than those guys. That's why it was so important to fix the D line, because not only is Levi able to cover longer, Trey and Teron, they're allowing them to make plays on the football as well. They're not playing back on their heels at all times. So I think that, yeah, the defensive line pressure definitely tries to it. The fact that Ed Oliver has developed more, the emergence of Greg Rousseau before we even expected it, the emergence of AJ Epinesa, the correct utilage and snap counts of the old men and Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes, that all directly ties to the secondary. And it's going to continue to tie to it. When we have that game that the quarterback has 7 seconds to throw, you're going to see a different secondary. And that's with any team. I don't care if it's Darrelle Reeves, Antonio Cromartie.
And when was the last time you seen what is he, a 4.6 speed? 4.5 maybe? When was the last time you seen him get beat deep? He doesn't. It's phenomenal. So that just goes to show what Clayton, what you said, is he's been in the system for how many years? 3+ years. He knows what he's doing, and he's not the best athlete, but if you're that slow and you're not getting beat over the top, I'm sorry, you're doing what you're supposed to do. And now he's cashing in on some of these opportunities to intercept the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go any further, are we all A's across the board for today's defensive performance for Leslie Frazier's grading?
Leslie gets an A on the season so far.
Yeah.
I agree. Travis?
Yeah, I mean, even in the Titans game, I mean, they ran out of gas, but every other game has just been phenomenal.
Yeah. This Bills defense is lights out. And today, on days like today, this is we're reminded this is the most complete team in football. Let's not forget that. There's days where, any given Sunday, like they say, obviously, but this is the most complete team in football when they get rolling and when they're rolling on all cylinders and when they're executing. It was a really good day for this Bills team, all in all, in all 3 phases. 45 points on offense, 5 turnovers on defense. And Isaiah McKenzie had a pretty good punt return today, and no fumbles, no muffs, none of that kind of nonsense. So it looked good in all 3 phases today, in my opinion. And this Bills football team looked to get it back on the right tracks right before they have a pretty important game on their field playing against Indianapolis next week. They have to start winning some of these AFC games. That's kind of important to me. But as questions posed on the screen for all the people in the chat on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter as well, please give us your player who gets the game ball today for your Buffalo Bills. Who are you going to give the game ball? Who's your player of the game? What have you? Who is it and why? Just let us know in the comments. And let me start with you, Jeremy. Who would be your player of the game for today? Who gets your game ball?
I'm gonna go to Josh Allen today, and obviously that's the easy one to go with. But he looked very efficient. This is like the Josh Allen we saw last year. Take what the defense is going to give you, make plays. He only ran the ball twice today at that. Kept everybody in order. And my game ball goes to Josh Allen. I think this is the performance we needed from him to see from him to get back on track here. So it's QB1.
More than deserving. Travis, who would be your who would be your player that gets the game ball today?
I'm going to give it to Stephon Diggs. 13 targets, 8 receptions, 162 yards. Adding a touchdown and a 57-yard reception. Nothing's more fun to watch than having a close touchdown called back, and then going right back to the well and just kind of making an even nicer catch. It was great to see him involved. I think it was warranted. And like I said on the end of my show, I was like, let him be a wide receiver. If things aren't going well, maybe, if you see that one-on-one and he's not wide open, it's not necessarily force the ball. We're not talking double coverage, but get him the ball. He's one of the best route runners in the league, and he definitely showed it today.
Yeah, that's for sure. What Stephon Diggs brings to the table is almost, it's mocked by nobody. He is one of the top receivers in the NFL, and he put that on display today. But he's not going to get my game ball today. I'm going to give my game ball to Spencer Brown. I love what Spencer Brown brings to the table. I think he's the Bills' best offensive lineman. And I don't think he's the best right now. I think he's the best for the next 3 years going forward, possibly even by the end of the season. He could be the best offensive lineman on this team. The way he is progressing, how fast he is progressing, every time I see Spencer Brown, I think he gets better. He looks really good. He knows how to use his size. And he's learning the game as he goes. Not that he doesn't know the game, but he's learning the league as he goes. And to see him play so well in his rookie year, to play, I wouldn't say effortlessly, but it seems that way with how, he takes at some of the best athletes in the world playing defensive end and takes them in stride, and he bunkers down and he makes the play and he makes the block. And, Spencer Brown, I think he's going to be a pivotal piece of that Bills offensive line for years to come, whether it's right tackle or left tackle. He is a beast. He is a really good football player. He has all of the athleticism in the world. He is everything that Cody Ford wasn't playing right tackle, and that is everything that that this Bills offense needs. Josh Allen needs a guy that can protect him back there for as long as he needs it. And Spencer Brown is a breath of fresh air to have an athletic tackle with his size and his length. So Spencer Brown gets my game ball today. That's for sure.
Well, Jason Taylor at YouTube says his game ball goes to Cody Ford because he didn't play today. That's mean.
Played left bench.
That is so mean, man. It's like the kid with the peanut allergy and T-ball, or no, not T-ball, but like 8th grade baseball that you just don't want to have, that you don't want to play, but his parents signed him up, so you got to put him in the 3rd inning. I'm just saying. Hopefully you're on that kid out there. If it didn't offend you, I'm sorry. Hopefully you got the allergy taken care of. Keep your EpiPen there close.
I agree with Cody Wells. Cody Ford is a bust. He is a bust.
Well, with Spencer Brown, which could be an easy plot twist here, is we've been looking for how to fix interior line. If he continues on this trajectory, right, there's a slight chance that he could be playing your left tackle spot next year.
If Dawkins goes inside.
Yeah. Or Dawkins go to right tackle, which is more traditionally a run blocking position.
He couldn't play right. He couldn't play right when they put him there, though.
Well, but this is a couple years later now, though. Yeah. That's the only reason I'm saying this a couple years later. So I think that he would probably be able to make the switch now at this point in his career than he would earlier, because I think when he came in, he played left tackle at Temple the entire time, I believe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just saying it could be a plot twist here. That's all.
I mean, I opened the door for that, or I believe either earlier in the season or after Brown was drafted, that Dawkins could be going inside eventually. But hey, you could have all the answers to your team right there. If Doyle develops, and then yeah.
So we got Jerry Manchester says Cody Ford should be given a severance package, which is a bus ticket to anywhere other than Buffalo. And you guys are just mean today, man. Why on YouTube says Bernard Butler gets my game ball? He didn't tackle himself today.
He got bodied 5 yards into the end zone on that goal line play.
Did you see him drop back into coverage on that one play?
His drop back was a lot quicker than I expected. Maybe that's what he does on run plays too.
Yeah, he drops back for sure.
Just gotta get back to that zone and the play's over for him. Coach said I gotta get here and I'm good. It was a fun game today. It's certainly fun to come on here and laugh about a Bills win and a few plays we can pull off of our hats and to kind of just laugh about the Bills versus grieving over a loss, if you will. But hey, another Bills win, another week. Bills improved to 6-3 right before they meet up with the team they faced in the divisional, it was the wild card round of the playoffs last year. But they have Carson Wentz coming versus having Phillip Rivers back then. It's going to be a fun game next week. Hopefully, we're going to learn a lot more about this Bills defense. Hopefully, they can not hopefully, but we'll see if they can stop the run with Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines and company. That's going to be an important game for this defense. I think we're going to learn some things about this team next week. Travis, any parting words?
Well, let's just gear up for a tough little stretch here. I mean, we play the ever encroaching Patriots twice in the next 6 weeks. You got the Bucs, who did take an L. You got the Panthers, who pulled out a solid victory, and the Saints are always formidable. But this Colts game has worried me most of the season because I thought they had our part of the able to eke out a victory there in the playoffs. possibly not having Star next week and that vaunted run game that they have. It's certainly going to be a matchup, and I think we need to bring the intensity that we did this week because it's going to be a battle in the trenches. Let's just hope that Carson Wentz pulls out some bonehead plays that he's good for, 1 or 2 a week. But other than that, I mean, feels good. Check us out on Friday for the Friday Night Forecast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to agree that it's going to be a battle within the trenches next week. And like you said, do not miss the Friday Night Forecast. If you want to follow Travis and everything he has going on, find his link to his Twitter page down below in the description, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. You can find Travis's handle down there, as well as Jeremy's and myself. But Jeremy, any parting words?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we got back to reality today. We took a bad L last week, but I think what we do is we get into the habit of disrespecting NFL talent, right? So we lose, or a team is 2-6, and we've been seeing this the last couple of weeks. Multiple upsets, and today was another day of multiple upsets. Parity to me in the NFL is at an all-time high. From your worst team to your best team, that gap is a lot closer than what it was probably 10 years ago. Like, think about it. Jacksonville is a team that we didn't expect them to win a lot of games this year, but we expect them to be competitive. Now, they have a bonehead coach in Urban Meyer, but we expect them to be competitive. And that's what I mean. If they played the Chiefs, we're not necessarily expecting the Chiefs to blow them out, even the same thing with the Bills. So we have a tough Colts team coming next week. And speaking of the Jags played them tough today. The Colts barely just eke that one out. And yes, I agree with Travis where I felt like the Colts beat us in almost all facets of that playoff game last year. And they came into Buffalo. The crowd didn't bother them, although it wasn't a full crowd. The crowd didn't bother them. And Frank Wright was drawing some things. If they had a quarterback with a little bit bigger arm and a little bit more athletic, they probably would have won that game. And now they do. So it's a different Colts team. But this is also a team that I don't necessarily want to see in the playoffs because I don't like teams who can run the ball well, or playing teams who can run the ball well when it comes playoff time. When it's cold, it's windy. I don't like those type of teams. So we need to go out here and win this game and try to help derail their season. So they're not sitting there waiting for us in December or January.
Yeah, this is an important game for the Bills. I kind of said it earlier when I was saying I don't want to see them lose to any more AFC teams, but that kind of goes in part to what I was saying. They can't really – it's not necessarily a matter of a forward, but, if the Bills – I think that ship kind of almost sailed for them having that first round bye at this point, but they can't really afford any more losses to AFC opponents if they're hoping to try to contest that for that bye week in the playoffs. And next week will be really important. But this game, this was the game that the Bills needed to have today. It's not necessary. We're not sitting up here gloating, acting as if we're not even surprised. This is the game that the Bills needed to come out and play today, and that was the attitude. It wasn't just one player. It felt like all of those players came out of the locker room with that mentality today, that they needed to execute, that they needed to show up, that they needed to do their jobs today, and in order to walk out of the Meadowlands with a W, and they did. Is it a fact that the Jets aren't really the best team in the NFL? Yeah, absolutely. We're not sitting up here acting like the Bills just won a Super Bowl or a playoff game or what have you. But this is a team that was red hot, white hot even earlier in the season when they beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. That was a big moment for this team. And it kind of felt like they peaked in a way, and their fire kind of burned out and dwindled out over the last couple of weeks. And, last week it kind of came to a culmination, and they lost to a lesser football team. But like Jeremy mentioned, a competitive football team, most certainly. But they lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars when they shouldn't have. And that kind of reignited this team, and it's going to be pretty important or pretty exciting to see how the rest of the season plays out. If that reignited a new fire in them, and this is going to carry them the rest of the way this season, losing to that team last week, or hopefully we don't have to see them go through another peak where they peak too early and they end up not really getting where they hope to. Hopefully we don't see them peak again until they win the Super Bowl. But we saw this Bills team do exactly what they needed to do today. They handled business. They went to New Jersey. They did their jobs, and they walked away with a blowout victory. It was a fun game to watch. It's been a fun show. Like I said earlier, be sure to follow these guys wherever you can find them. You can find their description. You can find the links to their Twitter pages in the description below. Be sure to follow the Cold Front Report everywhere on Instagram, on Twitter. like and share the video, like and share our live shows whenever you see us go live. That's at @ColeFrontReport_Bills News on Instagram, at ColeFront Report on Twitter, and be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's ColeFront Report. If you're not watching there and you want to stay up to date on our YouTube channel, that's just where you have to go, is ColeFront Report. Guys, it's always a pleasure. I want to thank you guys for your time. I want to thank the fans for staying tuned and watching this whole time for the whole 52 minutes. Stay safe, stay healthy, and go Bills.